Donut Bag is brought to you by ExpressVPN. Your data is your business. Protect it with ExpressVPN. For 3 extra months free with a 1-year package, go to the link listed in my Twitter profile. All right. The NFL Combine is a week away. With me to talk about the draft is Shane Hallam from Draft Countdown. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back. Always a pleasure.
Thanks for this is our first time on video, so
it is.
I know what you look like. You're beautiful. So this is awesome.
Thank you. I don't get that too often, so I'll take the compliment.
So the combine is a week away, and I mean we're in mid-February, and we still have another 2 months of talking about the draft to go, but how much does the combine actually change people draft prospects, whether they go up or down or not? Does it change a lot?
It does. I don't think it's one of those things where you're going to find, oh, here's this guy that was a 6th round pick and now he's a 1st round pick. But the NFL is based on athleticism, and if you don't have that requisite athletic ability, it doesn't matter. You're not gonna be able to play most positions. And so that's what teams are looking for. Kind of, what is that threshold? If you're picking an offensive lineman, or you're picking an edge rusher, you're picking a corner, like they have to be able to cover guys that are super athletic. And so they have to have that athletic ability. And I think that's really the key. The other thing is the combine's not just about the numbers, but we have those on-field drills. We get to see all these prospects back to back doing the same thing and compare them apples to apples. That's really hard to do when I'm trying to grade a tight end from Coastal Carolina to a tight end from Alabama. So this is a nice way to see how they look, how the technique is. And so I think NFL teams take that into account too.
It's kind of unfair because from what I understand, it's just a giant cattle call. It's like you're just moved from one place to another. You really don't get I don't know. It's not like the best of conditions for the draft prospects, but hey, this is a giant job interview, so what, deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely some outdated pieces to it, but the NFL has this data going back, how long. So they rely on just those numbers to once again keep comparing and seeing. So maybe someday it'll change a little bit in the prospects' favor. I'd be in favor of that, but we'll take what we can get for now.
And if things don't go well, there's always the pro day, which are much more favorable conditions for the draft prospects. They're in their own place. They got with their own people. They're they're much more comfortable settings. So they have another chance.
And we've seen players. The Miami Dolphins corner, Xavier Howard, comes to mind, who had a terrible combine and an excellent pro day, and he's, an all pro. So I think we saw last year, there's no combine, and guess what? It was fine. So yeah. I think it's proven. Yeah. The pro days, the times are getting super close to the combine times as it is. There might not be a need in the future, but the NFL will hang on to that cash and those viewers at least for now.
What was that? Talk of a boycott or something like that, or what was that all about?
So basically, we're a week out, so about 2 weeks before the combine, the NFL, the combine committee, I don't know, whatever it is, came out and said, hey, we're putting all the players in a bubble. No one else is allowed to talk to you while you're at the combine, and that's it. And all the agents are like, wait, I can't talk to my client. Their trainer who's training them on all these drills can't be out there to help them, can't tell them what to do. No, we'll show up for the medical stuff and we're out. Like, why would we do that? Like you said, we'll see at the pro day. And so, it was with 24 hours later, they backtracked because the NFL network's already set, everything's in motion. Like they can't have a third of the players not work out. So it looks like that's been at least semi-resolved, but I think we will still see some players start to opt out, even ones that maybe aren't the high end guys, say, look, I can just worry about it at the pro day.
Yeah. I mean, for the top people, it's almost not a good idea to go there because when you're scheduled to be drafted in the top 10 or something like that, you're really not going to it really doesn't help you. It could only hurt you. So yeah, we'll see. But that's I think that's the case every year. But So the big question is, what are the Steelers going to do? And if they go quarterback, first of all, let's talk about these quarterbacks. Is there really one worth drafting? Is there one going to be available at 20? And are they worth it? Are the top quarterbacks, are they actually good enough? Are they actually first round worthy?
It's a tough question, because I think almost any year, even if it wasn't this year, at 20, is there really ever a quarterback worth it? That's rare, unless you have someone like Lamar Jackson who's so different that most teams just didn't want to deal with it. And so that's what I think is the problem. Not only do you not have the high end Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence type prospect, but none of these guys match that. They all have issues. They all have question marks that aren't going to get answered before the draft. So you have to kind of decide that. And then on top of it, there's a lot of teams that need quarterbacks. So if one or two are gone that you did like, now are you going to reach on a guy you only like 90% of the time? And that's not a smart decision when you're drafting a first round quarterback either. So, I think the Steelers are obviously doing their due diligence. We learned that at the Senior Bowl with Mike Tomlin literally on the field for the first 2 days of practice, and Art Rooney II going down there for the first time. They're looking at these quarterbacks pretty hard, but I don't think that necessarily means that they're going to draft one or that one's available at 20. And I'd be pretty surprised if they trade up, and give up the multiple first round package it would take to even get in position to do that.
So they're not, they would have to give up a lot to, go into top 5 or top 10 or whatever. But, they went up, they trade up to number 10 a few years ago to get Devin Bush, and they gave up, I think, like a second and a third or something like that. So, is that what it's going to take? I mean, even when quarterbacks are not that good, it seems like because of their quarterbacks, they get taken early. So is it going to take having the trade up in the top 10 or top 15 or top 12 or something like that to get a quarterback?
I mean, I think it's possible. We'll see how things shake out, but you have Denver sitting at 9. You have Washington sitting at 11. Minnesota at 12 if they move Kirk Cousins, and New Orleans at 18. I mean, those are the teams that need a quarterback. So if you want Malik Willis, you want the quarterback from Liberty, he's probably going to be the first one off the board. He has the athletic rushing upside and the big arm. I mean, if you want to guarantee him, you're probably going to move up to 8 or 9. And that's a huge jump. That's going to cost you a future first. It's going to cost you your first and second this year at the very least. You're giving up 2 firsts and a second to move up there. So is that really worthwhile if you're not 100% confident this guy is going to smash and be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL? That's really the question to me. Or, do you sit at 20? Maybe you like Kenny Pickett, and I don't think Pickett will fall to 20, but I think it's possible. Maybe you like Matt Crowd in Mississippi, and all right, if he's there, we'll take him. But if he's not, then, we're going to move on. The one thing is, I think we're going to know. The Steelers are not great at hiding. Yeah, they don't try to hide their cards in the NFL draft tool. We knew they were taking Najee Harris last year. Everyone knew that. They don't hide their cards. And there's only one more roster spot for a quarterback on the team. We know Dwayne Haskins and Mason Rudolph will be there. So if they sign or trade for someone, they're not drafting a rookie. And if they don't, then they probably are. And I think we're going to know that going in.
That's a thing. I mean, the draft is end of April, and you have free agency in March, and there's a whole bunch of quarterbacks that are out there. Jameis Winston, Trubisky, then they could trade for Jimmy G or whatever. So there's a lot that could be done between now and then in terms of what teams will actually need quarterbacks. So it's we're still really early in this, but Malik Willis, that seems to be the sexy pick. Is he the quarterback with the highest ceiling in this draft?
I think pretty easily he's the quarterback with the highest ceiling, just because you have the rushing ability. I've heard he's going to run, if he runs the 40 at the combine, he might not, anywhere from a 4.38 to a 4.43. That's Lamar Jackson, Robert Griffin type speed. Plus I think he has a much stronger arm than either of those guys had. So when you take those two things, You can't teach any of that. But he really has trouble in terms of decision making and holding the ball too long, playing behind a bad offensive line. He got sacked a lot at Liberty. One of his worst games was against Louisiana Monroe, which you could take a guess is not a very good defense, when he was just chucking it up where places that he shouldn't. So, I think there's a lot of on the mental side. I've heard interviews have gone well that maybe, he was the only really good player they had on the offense. And that can be a problem too. We saw that with Patrick Mahomes and Ben Roethlisberger when they were in college. So, there's good things and bad things, but the upside's there. The question is, do you take the risk? And there's a lot of question marks as well.
Well, if he wants to go to a team with a bad offensive line, come on down.
He has experience, so we have that.
Yeah. But what's a problem, a con I see with him, and I think just about every quarterback in this draft, is he's not very tall. Isn't that an issue? I see him listed as 6 foot nothing, 218 pounds. Isn't that a little short?
It is. And that is this class. I mean, we're seeing that trend in the NFL move toward shorter quarterbacks. Russell Wilson kind of kicked it off. I mean, Kyler Murray's had a lot of success. So I think NFL teams maybe are backing off of needing the old 6'4", 6'5", old school, 80s, 90s quarterbacks. But at the same time, I mean, hey, it'd be nice to have a guy that's 6'3", 220 and can run a 4.4. That'd be great too. So I think that's an issue. I don't know if the Steelers are going to be willing to kind of adjust the offense to a player like that, because they really haven't had to experience that in a long time. So that's this entire first round. I don't think there's anyone, maybe, Desmond Ridder out of Cincinnati and Kenny Pickett, maybe those guys are a little bit tall enough, but they're still not, it's still not like a 6'4". So that is a question.
What about Kenny Pickett? I mean, we know all, I watch University of Pittsburgh games. I mean, I'm a diehard Pitt fan. I know him very well. And he seems very much, he's very, I don't know if you want to call him polished, but he had a lot of experience in college. But does he maybe, I mean, what are scouts saying about him? Because he seems like he could go high, but I don't know if maybe he doesn't have the highest ceiling.
I think what you're generally getting with him. And I've made the comparison to you're probably getting what Derek Carr is in the NFL. You're getting an above average starter who has a good arm, can move around a little bit in the pocket. We saw that run in the bowl game, or in the last in the ACC championship game, excuse me. And so he has a little bit of athleticism. He has a good arm, really good on the run, but he can't kind of create space. He's not creating space with how he throws the football. He's not really winning. I think Jordan Addison was a big part of his success. And I think that's a question mark. And I think teams are a little bit scared away from the one big year of production. Why did it take this long? And I think it's a fair question. Now you have an older guy that's coming in that's really only shined in that 1 year. That's scary, because if a quarterback dominates as a freshman, chances are he's a pretty good football player, right? And if he dominates at 23, 24 years old, playing against 18, 19-year-olds, now you're like, well, do we know that he can do that in the NFL? So I think there are still those question marks there, but I could see him be the first quarterback off the board because of that safety that teams have with him ultimately.
In your mock draft on draftcountdown.com, you have them taking Matt Corral from Mississippi. What's so good about him? I haven't heard him mocked to the Steelers.
I think a lot of people leaned in on the Senior Bowl quarterbacks because the seniors were down there. Matt Corral's kind of the one guy that wasn't, because he's a junior. And he's on the smaller side. He's probably the smallest quarterback in terms of his frame. He's probably going to come in under 210 pounds. A little bit of a fear there, but in terms of improvement from sophomore to junior, I thought he had a huge improvement, really sharp, quick release, which I think would be great behind that offensive line for Pittsburgh, getting the ball out quickly, had some good downfield shots. he's probably the second most athletic of these top 4 quarterbacks, right behind Malik Willis. Can do some running stuff, some RPOs, and he's really interesting in kind of how he worked within an offense that, quite frankly, is a little more. It's not pro style. I wouldn't call it pro style, but it's kind of how pro teams are trending toward a spread that works with some of those passing reads. And he's my number 1 quarterback in this class. I think if there's someone that people are forgetting about, it's Matt Corral.
And he is, another thing that's against Malik Willis is, Liberty is not exactly a strong school, Power 5, and Matt Corral went to Ole Miss, so he had much better competition, so that has to help.
Yeah, and even if you watch the Alabama game, where statistically it's like, it wasn't very good. He was doing a lot of good things for me in that game. He was carrying the team. And so those are, when I have SEC players, I'm like, what do they do against Alabama, right? Like, let's watch that, because that whole defense is probably going to be playing in the NFL. And I thought Corral held himself well for the talent disparity, and has, consistently been against SEC defenses and, doing well there. So yeah, that's definitely a plus for me.
What about Sam Howell? It seems like that's just, there's a lot of red flags there. What's the deal with him?
He's such a tough guy to evaluate. And I think he could fall to the second round. I think I have him going in my mock at the very last pick of the first round. But I think he could be the QB5 off the board. I think teams are just going to be a little bit scared away. But I mean, Howell is one of those guys that came in as a freshman to a dead program at North Carolina, and he brought that program back. I mean, he was the quarterback that brought him and Mac Brown together. Good arm strength. This season, he lost all his playmakers, right? Javonte Williams, NFL, Michael Carter, to the Jets. He lost both his top receivers to the NFL, and you could see it, as they did not have good players other than their top receiver, Josh Downs. And Sam Howell's just running all over the place, like not scripted. He's trying to pick up yardage. The offensive line was not good, and he kind of took the team on his back and was willing them sometimes to points and to keep games close. It led to some bad decisions. It led to, some problems. We saw that against Pitt, especially in that first half. I mean, he was ineffective. So, I think how just what's really the upside here? Is he a starting NFL quarterback? I think it's tough to say yes. I like him. I think he's going to surprise and do better than people think, but I don't think once again, none of these guys are just top tier franchise game-changing quarterbacks.
Yeah. Let's say the Steelers don't go quarterback in the first round. What about on the offensive line? Who do you think will be around if they stick at 20?
I think probably the top option there is Trevor Penning, the offensive tackle from Northern Iowa. I think the top 3 guys, Evan Neal from Alabama, Ike Ekwonu from NC State, and Charles Cross from Mississippi State will probably be gone. Charles Cross maybe is a possibility, but I think Penning is probably the best fit and value there. Obviously a small school player, but he actually got votes for the best offensive player in FCS this year as an offensive tackle, which we know with the Heisman voting, how rare that is. So pretty much the Heisman for, FCS, he was in the running. Huge, 6'7", 330. And I mean, he has that, Pittsburgh mentality. There were at the Senior Bowl, their edge guys getting mad at him because Trevor Penning wouldn't stop. He's driving guys into the goalpost. He was he was there to show how good he was. And it took him a day, as it does for a lot of these small school players, but then he showed he belonged. So I think you're getting a good athlete with good size, which is something that didn't quite get in the drafted offensive line last year and was a problem. He has the requisite athletic ability and the long arms and all those things you look for to keep edge rushers off, but has that kind of nasty demeanor. I think there's some technique that he can clean up. His hand placement's a little raw, and sometimes he can kind of get caught on skates if he gets his feet moving too much. But I think he's well worth the pick at 20 and could be a potential franchise left tackle.
How about Kenyan Green, that guard out of Texas A&M?
I like him a lot. I think both him and Zion Johnson, the guard out of Boston College, both should be considerations. Like Kenyan Green is one of those consistent players who, from day one in college football, popped on film and continued it. If you watch, once again, the game against Alabama where Texas A&M upset them, I mean, it was Kenyan Green and their freshman center were moving the defensive linemen, guys that are going to go in the top 100 of this draft, moving them off to create holes for the run game. He's really good at that. He has the kind of the body and that lower body strength to drive, to grab and move. He's really good at that. In terms of pass protection, he's not this, he's not going to pull for you. He's not going to end up being this lead blocker running down the field, but rarely do you see him make a big mistake. He doesn't allow the guy to get penetration. Just pretty solid all around, a good fighter. I think Kenyan Green, like a lot of interior linemen, they kind of get lost in this first round of the draft. The Steelers have found steals like that with David DeCastro. I think Green could be one of them.
What about Tyler Lindenbaum, that the center from Iowa is? Do you think he would even make it to 20? It seems like he's like the sexy pick if centers could be sexy.
I mean, if he would make it there, I think that's a run the card to the podium kind of pick. He is, man, I'm trying to think of the last offensive lineman that had this much fun. Maybe Quentin Nelson for the Colts. Like, I had this much fun to watch. I mean, Tyler Linderbaum just wrecks people, and every snap of the game, he is never standing still. He is moving guys. He is creating, sometimes even taking on two defenders, creating holes. He's just really, really good. I think he could slide in at center. We saw Kendrick Green be a lot more comfortable at guard. I mean, if you could make that move, you might upgrade to 2 positions, which I think is always a plus. The only issue with Tyler Linderbaum is his weight. He's going to come in under 300 pounds, and that's tough, for a center to feel comfortable and confident. I think you almost need to lean more into the zone blocking scheme if you want to really have him be the center. And so I think that's where he could, that could be good if you like him and you want him to fall to the Steelers, or if you're like, well, maybe we shouldn't take him if he's going to come in 292, 295.
Yeah, I think the Steelers kind of like their centers a little bit, I don't want to say smaller, but a little more athletic. So yeah, that might be a problem, but we'll see. How about on the defensive side? I've also seen Andrew Booth, that cornerback from Clemson, mocked to the Steelers. Is that a possibility?
I think it's a possibility. I think some people feel like they're going to be scared at corner, right? Because there's been some whiffs there in the draft. Kevin Colbert's last year, you really want to take a corner in the first round, I like Andrew Booth. I do, out of Clemson. Sometimes those Clemson corners, because they rush the passer so well, it's tough to get a good gauge, and often maybe are a little bit worse than they look on film. But I think Booth has that requisite athletic ability. He's probably going to be, low 4.4 guy. He was kind of the number one corner for Clemson this year, got physical at the line of scrimmage. He has some press ability and a really smooth athlete. He didn't really get beat deep. He's able to turn and run. He has good makeup speed. Like, I think he's a pretty solid player. I think he's kind of a safe player. Do I think he's, the next Darrelle Revis or anything? No, but I think you could get a player that could, do a lot of things that Joe Hayden did, but at a younger age.
I think it's really cool. I was talking about the draft in February. It's like a month from now, we're just gonna laugh. It's like, oh, remember when we thought that they were, they do move a lot, and I mean, we could talk about what they should do, but it sounds like a lot of times some of these mock drafts, they go based on what they're hearing from the teams. And I think those are the most important ones, is like what the teams actually like from a player. And we'll learn from, who they talk to. I mean, isn't that a big thing of like who they actually interview and stuff like that? And back in the day before COVID, the players would would visit the city and talk to them. I don't know how they do that now. It's probably all Zoom meetings or something like that. But it's just funny how things will change between now and then, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be probably one of these guys that we talked about. It's not even going to go in the top 50. It'll be right. That always happens, or has a bad combine. I'm hopeful. I haven't heard anything specifically, but I'm hoping that teams can bring players into the facilities again this year. That will happen kind of March into April. So we'll see, because the Steelers, once again, they draft who they bring in. So we'll get a much better idea of really what positions they're looking at and where they're looking.
Yeah, they like you said with Najee Harris, they don't really hide what they want to do. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Where can people find your work and follow you?
Check me out. Draftcountdown.com is the managing partner over there. So I have a 7-round mock draft up. You can check that out. My full rankings, ton of articles. We also do a podcast called The Draft Countdown. If you want a Draft Countdown podcast in your rotation there, then you can sign up and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. So yeah, that's where you can find me. And I'm always on Twitter at Shane P. Hallam. If you have any questions, always happy to answer.
This is your time. This is it. I mean, heck,
Christmas is coming a couple months away.
Yeah, this is your Christmas. This is your Christmas time. Yeah, I mean, you have a 2023 mock, a 2024 mock drafts. Do you ever look back at what you had for 2022, like a couple years ago or something, and it's probably a lot different, right?
It's bad. It is not good. Like, I wish I could be like, I knew, all these players would be first round picks. Like, there's a couple in there that I feel good about, but looking back, there's a lot of players that didn't even declare for this draft that I had in there. So it's always wild.
I mean, look at the Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett would have been like a 3rd or 4th or 5th rounder a year ago if he came out, and now he's first round or something like that. So
it changes so quickly, but I think it's fun to start early and at least get some names for people to watch.
Yeah, awesome. All right, hey, thank you so much. This is awesome.
No, thanks.
Hey, I'll see you.